this is a detective constable entry program. So this is exactly the same, or I say exactly the same, very similar, I should say, to the PSEP. So you don't have to have a degree to join, and you don't have to do a degree like you do with the PCDA. It is a non-degree route. So the foundation training is exactly the same as PSEP. It's in-house, delivered by the force of your choice, with the 20 to 25 weeks foundation training. And it's a 2-year program. So very much the people going through the detective route and the PC route will stay together pretty much for the first initial kind of training period. Then if you took this kind of opportunity, you will then work in uniform for a period of about 10 weeks. Because you need to get those basic skills as a police officer. So there'll be a little bit of embedding in after initial training, bedding in as a police officer. And whichever route you take, I'm not sure about police now, but certainly the others, everyone completes an operational competency portfolio, which is to provide evidence that you're competent in the role before you get signed up as a police constable or a detective constable. So everyone has to do that as well. The difference with this is when you get into sort of year 2, you are then put into an investigative role, whether that's CID, the sort of main investigative department, or a subsection of that. And you'll work towards completing the National Investigators exam. So the added kind of complexity to this is you are the initial training, you need to learn how to be a police officer. And then quite early on, you go into a detective investigative role with support, don't get me wrong, and you have a tutor and people that can help. And then you complete the National Investigators exam alongside all of that. And it's a tough exam, really tough exam. So it's a lot of extra work. However, if that's where your kind of interests lie, certainly the detective route is a really good approach, and certainly wasn't offered. Back in the day, everybody went into uniform, and later on you diversified into a specialist area, whereas this gives you the opportunity to go in early on into that. So a lot of people apply for this who have been in previous kind of roles that are kind of connected to criminal justice, so ex-probation officers, but it is open to anybody. But they tend to be more attracted to this because of previous investigative experience. Tough program, but really, really excellent if that's what you're interested in. Anything else on that, Darren, being in the ex-detective in the room?
No, just one claim to fame. So I designed the very first direct entry detective program in 2014. My force, I was lucky enough to be sponsored for a master's degree, and my final dissertation was to design a framework for direct entry detective program, because one didn't exist across England and Wales. And that's now morphed into a huge beast now, and many forces stole with pride, and then they've sort of made slight amendments as well. One thing I would say, if you're thinking about this, so I'm just letting in one more. If you're thinking about this entry route, it has become exceptionally tough for your final interview. So only 4 years ago, there were 5,000 detective vacancies across England and Wales Police Service. 5,000 detective vacancies. Now, you'll be lucky to find 50 detective vacancies. So this process is different because, as well as a final interview, you will also have some sort of bolt-on exercise. We go from the Metropolitan Police, which is the extreme. If you're applying to be a detective in the Metropolitan Police, not only will you do your final interview, you will do a role play, you will do a briefing, and you will do an intray exercise, as well as the final interview. It's really tough. For a number of other forces, you will do at least one of those if you're applying for the detective route. And it is designed to only take the best candidates. However, we are here to help. Blue Light is really experienced in coaching and planning and prepping candidates that are applying for any force in the detective route. And we have significant high successes. I'm not going to say what our success rate is, because that would be unfair. However, we have a significant success rate for all the coaches in respect of the final interview process for detective route. It's not easy, requires a lot of commitment, but I would say, being a detective for over 20 years, I would say it really is a job like no other. I'm not going to I don't really use cliches, but it is an outstanding job, and I loved every single minute of it being a detective.
Yeah.
So just go on to the final pathway, number 7. Again, it is the detective route, but with a bit of a twist, because some forces now, in particular Hampshire Constabulary, now only recruit once every 12 months, and that takes place in November. And not only do they only recruit once a month, you have to have a degree to apply for the detective constable entry program. You have to have a degree, and it's now only open once a year. This goes to show how attractive and a career of choice and popularity being a detective is. I'm not aware of any other force at the moment that says you have to have a degree for the detective constable entry program. Not sure why Hampshire did that, other than to filter out certain people from the process. And they obviously thought that candidates with a degree have got enhanced skills around life skills and policing skills. But I don't know any other force that does that at the moment. But we are really keeping an eye out in changing policies and procedures and practices of forces, especially around the detective entry route, because this may become the norm. I hope it doesn't, but it may become the norm. So this is virtually exactly the same. And I'll go through this very quickly. Your initial training provides you with core knowledge around policing, but it also equips you to take the National Investigators Exam, known as the NIE. So if you want to be a detective, you have to apply for and pass the National Investigators Exam. That is all done for you through your force. There's no cost to you. They give you preparation time, they give you enhanced learning time, but you have to pass the National Investigators Exam because it tests and examines your legal knowledge. Because as a detective, you need more in depth knowledge in certain crime areas. You then get attached to emergency response teams. You learn your your core policing skills, like Sarah said, and you work towards independent patrol status. That's known as IPS. So if you ever see the abbreviation IPS, that means you're working towards your independent patrol status, which means after your training, after your coaching, after your portfolio completion, you will hit day one on your own in your force area in uniform. And I still remember my first day in uniform because it was a Friday night and it was my 21st birthday. And that was my very first day of independent patrol, walking Basingstoke town centre on a Friday night in the very early 90s. That was really good fun. But after the first 12 months, you go onto an investigative team and you stay with the investigation team for the next 12 months, complete your portfolio, you take the National Investigators Exam, and after that, you have significant training in investigation of serious and complex crime. And then you become a fully accredited detective as well. So, one to consider if you've got an investigative mindset, if you're coming from a role previously that had some sort of investigation, you're really good at analysing information and you're good at critical thinking. You want to be an investigator of serious and complex crime. Pathway number 6, detective without a degree. Pathway number 7, detective with a degree, could be a pathway that is really going to align to what you want to achieve as a career in policing and criminal justice.